We need Dr. Haley to be here, though, right?
We do for a quorum, but there's no action item, so even if we don't really have a quorum, we just defer the minutes, but he's on his way.
Yeah, Joe, I was just going to tell you, he's on the way. I just talked to him.
Thanks.
I tell you, he's doing a great job.
Oh, incredible.
He and Tom both doing fantastic.
Not easy times either.
No.
Have you seen
Everything
the
you
Ascension
hear from-
commercial that Tom does? Have you seen his commercial?
No.
He's got a commercial that's running right now about making sure people still continue to see their doctors.
Did you talk to
Vicki, this
doctors
is Landon. I
about
see
this? They just say.
Board Member Van Dosdal in the waiting room. I just want to make sure that is he's signed in as a guest. I want to make sure that that is the proper person to let into the room. Can you please confirm? Okay. I'm fixing to do the audio and video check for him now.
I think Vicki missed her calling.
Let's see. I gotta find him on the screen.
I think she's a stage manager in disguise.
Board Member Van Osdal, I'm not seeing you on video quite yet, but you are good for an audio and video check, and you may proceed.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and your videos just came in now, so you're good to go.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Vicki, I do see it is 9 a.m. I just need to go ahead to bring everybody in from the room.
Do we want to wait a couple minutes until Dr. Haley arrives, or do we want to get started?
Does the quorum start when he gets here?
It does. Maybe we could do some of the entry,
I would do
welcoming stuff.
Why don't we-
the entry and
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called the meeting to order. Let us begin, if we may, with a brief time of reflection. Thank you. I don't believe there are any introductions this morning. Can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
can we do that
Or do we
without
need
Dr.
a-
Haley?
We really need a quorum. So for folks that are online, we've only got 3 of the board members present in the room. Once we get a 4th member, my understanding is we've got a 4th member on his way. Should be here in a moment. So any action items, we need to wait till we have physical quorum in the room. So if we can defer the adoption of the agenda until Dr. Haley arrives.
Great, we'll do that. Let us have our safety briefing. Jackie Shield.
I think Tony Long is probably going to start us off and then hand it off to Jackie.
Thank you, Chair Baker and members of the board. Before we have our safety moment, let's take a minute to recall that in the event of an emergency, make sure to call 911 and to alert others. If the emergency requires an evacuation, please remember to use the stairwell, not the elevator. And for those of you in the T19 meeting area, just remember that the assembly location will be the Baptist parking garage, which is located at the corner of Ashley and Main Street. Make sure to pair up with your safety partner, which is the person to your right, and always be cognizant of the potential for trip hazards. And in those situations where we cannot socially distance, let's make sure that we continue to wear our mask. Lastly, please remember to keep your cell phones on silent and on mute when not actively speaking during today's board meeting. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Jackie Shield, who is our Director of Water and Wastewater Reuse, Delivery, and Collection.
Good morning. Thank you, Tony. Good morning, Chair Baker and members of the board. This month's safety moment is traffic and vehicle safety. Out here in our water and wastewater delivery and collection team, we have a large number of commercial vehicles and heavy equipment. And before each use, the driver will conduct a pre-trip inspection to ensure that everything is working properly on the vehicle. And then also, too, they'll do a 360-degree walk around to verify that the conditions have not changed for that vehicle since it was last parked. Also, too, you know that many of our water and sewer utilities are located in our roadways and in our right-of-ways. The move-over law in Florida does protect and apply to utility workers as an added layer of safety while we're out there working in the field. Okay, and a few safe driving keys. We always pull in those large pieces of equipment. Look ahead 15 seconds down the road at least, because you know, those pieces of equipment do not stop on a dime. It takes a few extra moments. Also, too, always be on the lookout and anticipate dangerous and hazardous situations. And keep your eyes moving. Be conscious and aware of blind spots, and use your mirrors, especially pulling that piece of equipment behind you. Leave yourself an out. We always practice defensive driving techniques and provide enough space for our vehicles to allow for an escape route outside of a situation. And most importantly, we remain visible at all times, making sure other drivers see us. And always, please put your cell phone down. It is never okay, and nothing is so important that is to text and drive at the same time. And lastly, everyone, buckle up. It is the law, and seatbelts do save your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Next month's safety moment will be on injury prevention, specifically talking about the hierarchy of controls. Real quickly, taking a look at our primary lagging performance safety indicator. Chair Baker, you can see here that we're at 0.73, so that's trending favorably into the second quarter. And as you can see here, that we're well below the published utilities industry averages. And then lastly, Chair Baker, before turning it back over to you, I'd like to take a moment and recognize the hardworking employees at our Buckman Water Reclamation Facility. Very proud to announce that they have recently achieved 5 years without an OSHA-defined recordable injury, and that's very impressive in their line of work. So congratulations to that team. We're very proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jackie. It is abundantly clear that safety is a priority at JEA, and the numbers are spectacular. I congratulate you and all the JEA team. It's really an important part of this business, and you're doing it very well. We, as a city, we should be very proud of you. Welcome, Dr. Haley. We now
Mr. Chair,
have
my apologies for being late. Triple
you,
booked at 8:30, so.
you didn't miss anything.
How are you?
Now that we have an agenda, why don't, a quorum, why don't we adopt the agenda? Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Jody, could you give us a sunshine law and public record statement, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are still in the virtual hybrid meeting setting in which we're allowed to have our public meetings over the internet as well as physical presence. We have 4 members present in the room, so we do have physical quorum. We're in good stead to move ahead. The notice has been the meeting's been properly noticed. Minutes will be taken, and we got quorum, so we're good to go.
Great. We've got one comment from the public that I know of. Valerie, are you here?
Is Randy here?
She's not.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. I wanted to address the legislation 2020-529 that passed on Tuesday, which includes the JEA employees. I completely understand JEA's concerns about not having enough manpower to maintain system reliability. So I can't tell you how many JEA employees plan on taking advantage of the early retirement, but I do know I have 2 members that desperately need this legislation due to health concerns. I had sent out an email trying to get an idea of how many people would take advantage of it just within my unit. And some of the comments are, I have 28 years of service at present, so I do not intend to retire if the opportunity presents itself. That's an electric troubleshooter. I'm assuming, it's another comment, I'm assuming I'm in that group of eligible to retire early, but I have no issues at this time, so they look like they're going to be, stay for another 3 years and try to make their 32. I did have a PPO at Northside saying they would consider it. Let me see, a couple others that said, based on their health concerns and, some family issues, that they would also take advantage of it. And others that are real close to their milestones already, so they wouldn't take advantage of it if, because it wouldn't apply to them. They would just wait till April. I know we had at Northside, at the electric shop, quite a few employees that left. 2 had retired, 1 moved to Alaska, 1 transferred to the Protection and Controls Department, which is my department. So I know I'm not, going to say that the lack of manpower was due to the potential sale of JEA, but it didn't help either, because I know we lost some good linemen during the uncertainty. The bottom line is we already have an aging work group that people are already close to reaching their retirement milestone. So this legislation doesn't really capture how many would be eligible to retire in 1 year, 5 years, et cetera. So I hope that JEA will take a good look at where we are and what we need to do so we don't ever find ourselves in this situation again. I know JEA is currently actively recruiting to fulfill those voids. It is going to take time to get the workforce back to where it needs to be. And I just want to conclude with what Jay said in his last email. And it says, I suspect the people want to work here because it is a good place to be. And that is so true. I've been here 24 years, and every day I'm just in awe, to be part of this great organization. And I think that's the way a lot of the employees feel. So, I know there's a lot of unknowns, moving forward with this legislation, but I think we can come through it together. And, it'll just take time for us to rebuild our workforce. So I appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you for your leadership. It's a good reminder that you have given us to make sure we start rebuilding our workforce. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay.
We need to get Landon an opportunity to see if there's anyone online that wants
Right.
to publicly comment.
Landon, can
Thank you.
proceed?
Yes, sir. I'm going to go ahead and roll into public comments virtually. Once again, my name is Landon, and for those that are new to the WebEx technology, I'm going to give a brief overview of the controls for public comments. Now, if you're joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device, such as a smartphone or tablet, you may move around your screen and will see a series of buttons at the bottom. The very first one that you'll notice looks like an icon of a microphone. If it's red, it means you're muted and will be on mute for the majority of this meeting unless recognized for public comments. Now, if you are recognized to speak or asked to provide comment, you will click on that button and it will turn green. This means that you are unmuted and people can hear you. Now, I do ask that you use this option to mute your line when you're not speaking. Now, we have also enabled the chat capability. Now, if you touch your screen or scroll next to the participant icon on the bottom right, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up the chat window. And you can direct any questions or comments for public comments in this option. Now, for those that have called in directly, and we do have a few, there are 2 additional ways you can notify me that you like to provide comment. The very first one is by pressing *3 on your telephone, which will raise your hand. And then you may press *6 to unmute your line. Now, if you unmute your line, please state your first and last name so everyone may hear you who is speaking before you proceed with your comment. Now, we also have enabled the raised hand feature. If you click on next to the person labeled participants, there is an option that will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined today's meeting. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you will notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting me know that you're raising your hand, that you'd like to be recognized for comment. So those are the various ways to notify me that you'd like to provide public comments. And now we'll proceed to look to see if anybody has raised their hand in today's WebEx. I am not seeing any raised hands, and I do not see any comments being typed in today's virtual session. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. It's my understanding that Councilmember Randy DeFore is not on the line today. Is that true?
I think that's right.
I think that's correct. So we will not have a comment from her, and we'll proceed with Jay Stowe to give his managing director report.
Good morning. First of all, Valerie, thank you for being here, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. I think, as some of you know, I every once in a while roam through the building and try to find people. Since we're working remotely, I try to find people to talk to. And the other day, I was roaming through the building, and I found a picture of you on the wall for a safety moment that might have been a couple of years ago. But thank you for your service. And yeah. Good morning, everyone. I imagine there's going to be a time whenever I stop counting by measuring time in days and months and board meetings, but we're on board meeting 3, so today is not the day to stop counting. Next week, I cross 90 days here. I hope that today you find this meeting informative. As Jody said earlier, there's not a lot of action items here. We continue to make changes in the process. Some of it is with the room and the way the WebEx works in the field. And I guess give you a heads up to be prepared, because on March 12th, there's a Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and there's a lot on that agenda that will turn into a lot of work coming up in the next few months with the board. I've spent much of my time here listening, trying to understand the topics that we have in front of us, to understand what's important. I think I shared with you at my first meeting that I had 3 priorities to focus on: COVID response, developing a leadership team, and what we need to do to address our water and wastewater capital plan. I'm pleased with the team that we've put together. It really has been working for almost a year now with the COVID response. We doubled down on that effort when I got here, and they continue to meet weekly, and I like the effort that they've put forward to help keep us safe. And they've been going for nearly a year. We continue to look at, think about, and focus on the water and wastewater capital plan, but we're beginning to get a handle on how best to proceed to make good decisions relative to the right projects at the right price, managed by the right people. And I am really thrilled to let you know about the new leadership team structure. I look forward to the next few months as you get to spend some time with them. Last week, we announced that we are changing the leadership team from 11 direct reports to 7. That will include a chief operating officer, customer officer, human resources officer, finance, administrative, external affairs, and a chief strategy officer. And I was proud of JEA and the way that people responded. I am proud of being a part of this team, and I'm particularly proud of the 4 individuals that we were able to name last week. As you're aware, Jody Brooks is going to step into the role of Chief Administrative Officer. David Emmanuel will be our new Chief Human Resources Officer. Sheila Presley is our Chief Customer Officer, and Laura Dutton will be coming to be our Chief Strategy Officer. This is a great team that will continue to support the organization in Northeast Florida. I have a goal of being able to name the other 3 people in the Finance, External Affairs, and Chief Operating Officer role by the end of July. I'd like to thank the folks that stepped up in this interim period to help JEA through what I call an interesting time. They did a fantastic job, and I appreciate the work that each one of them has done. And you'll see that several of them have been named into permanent roles that will help propel us forward. This team will not have a shortage of things to work on, to think about. In fact, later today, Joe Orfano is going to give you an update on the rating agency's calls. For now, in this part of the meeting, I just want to recognize and let you all know as board members the work that Chair Baker has done in the last couple of weeks. He's been with us on the rating agency calls, which in a volunteer board as you are giving your time, he gave even more, being with us for the last couple of weeks for 6 hours, and I appreciate the focus that you helped bring to that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We have other big issues that we're dealing with, and I want to talk a little bit about some that are industry issues. Watching what played out in Texas over the last week or so. Last week, as the cold weather came through Texas, I was able to talk to Ricky Erickson, who is our Vice President of Electric Systems. We had some minor impacts even in Jacksonville because of natural gas constraints, but we have backup fuel oil at North Side, and we're able to make adjustments. So we had no operational issues. Once we were sure there was no impact to our system, we started talking, Ricky and I started talking about how we could deal with similar issues to Texas. We have a good plan, and we have a diversity of generation, but we are vulnerable to extremely cold weather. That was the first day of the crisis. Then the next day, the news out of Texas was about water, frozen water lines. And I thought, when you were recruiting me, that Florida was safe from cold weather. But if you look at the map, Houston and Jacksonville have very similar climates. And as we saw through Texas, Louisiana, and even all the way up to Tennessee, entire very large cities have system-wide boil water alerts. I realize this is no longer an electric crisis alone, but also a water crisis. And we have a water crisis, we have a public health crisis. And to think that it can't happen here, I think is a mistake. In January of 1985, we had a low temperature of 7 degrees. So we could have issues with extremely cold weather. With that in mind, we met with the leadership team to review our plans that we have in place for emergencies. We have a strong emergency response plan to handle many situations. We've recently completed a resiliency study to address flooding concerns of our water and wastewater system, but we need to do more. To that end, while we're good on planning for hurricanes, we're kicking off a new task force focused on resiliency beyond hurricanes that will be led by our new Chief Strategy Officer, Laura Dutton. There's much more to come on this, but we're going to remain focused on it and be prepared as best we can. Much of what happened operationally in Texas could happen here, and we need to have the plan. But the good news is we have done a lot of work to respond to a lot of different types of emergencies, so we are not starting from scratch. We also have, I think, better news in that we are a publicly owned municipal system that is not focused on profits, and our rates are not market-driven. We have rates that would not have turned into extremely outrageous bills, as you've read about in Texas, and we'll continue to do what is best for our customers. Closer to home, and Valerie talked about one of these, we've had a couple of interesting items the City Council's been working on since our last meeting. At the last meeting, we talked a little bit about the septic tank phase-out program, and I let you know that we did not have enough funding for all three of the neighborhoods that were on the list from 2016. Since then, we have committed another $12.5 million on top of the previously committed $50 million to complete those three subdivisions. The city has committed to fund the rest of the costs to complete those three subdivisions that were planned in the 2016 list. Additionally, there was some legislation filed to fund $100 million more from the city, and there are ongoing discussions. I've asked our team to get back together with the City of Jacksonville team to make the best decision we can to support the community and do what's best for our customers and the environment. The second item is what Valerie mentioned relative to the pension change that the city passed this week. We will open negotiations as required with the unions to discuss this topic. The legislation that is approved changes the number of people that are potential to retire. We have 18% of our workforce that could retire now. And with this change, that will increase for the period of time that it's open to 33%. We don't think that 33% of our employees are going to retire. In fact, right now, while 18% could retire on any given year, about 4% do. And so we think it's going to be something we can manage. The topic came up actually a week before I was named CEO, so I've been involved in some of the discussions from early on, and we had asked to be carved out of that legislation. And I think that was the right call for us to do because we have a fiduciary responsibility and a responsibility to serve our customers. But I also understand what the council is asking for, and I'm happy to work with the unions to address this issue. I'm proud of the way that we handled the situation, the way that we answered questions, and most importantly, the open, honest, transparent way that we addressed city council. This is a big issue, but not likely an issue that's going to cause significant concerns. Even closer to home, I speak to employee groups, community groups, and a fair amount of people, and each time I do, I reiterate how proud I am to be part of this team, that I get to represent you and I get to represent all of the employees at JEA. And I hope that you and the employees, too, are as proud as I am to be part of this team. With that in mind, we're making what I think is a small change, but an important change to our building between now and the next board meeting. There is a sign on top of our building, and it used to light up. But sometime in 2012 or 2013, the light went out. And you should be prepared, I have a number of cheesy lines about the idea of lighting up Northeast Florida again. How we're going to shine a light on JEA. How we're going to be a bright light for economic development in the community. I can keep going, but I won't. It's okay. But I want to put the light on in the building because I'm proud of what we represent. I think the employees should be proud to be part of JEA. I think the community should be proud of what JEA represents as part of this community as a publicly owned utility. We are the utility for Jacksonville and for Northeast Florida, and we should shine our light and let people know that JEA is back. With that, I'll turn it back over to you and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Questions? Bobby?
I'll make a comment. Jay, your communications to employees, to the public has been fantastic. It really has made a difference. People feel the transparency and the communication is back, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, and, I'll say, you continue to say we're focusing on the little things, but I know that you're focusing on the really big things too, so thank you for that. And we all are looking forward to having, and I think it does start candidly with the Finance Committee meeting, that, we've got some meaty things to still address. But thank you for focusing on the little things, because in my experience, it's the little things that the associates and employees pay attention to. So thank you. I know you'll continue to pay attention to those.
Thank you.
And John, I'll mention one other thing, and I talked to Jay about this, is, it's the day-to-day is things that we think about, focus on. It's the Houstons that we hit us in the what. And there's something out there that I talked, and I think we've got to be very aware of and really focus on, is cyber. I think, it happened, a few months ago with Russians getting into a small utility and SolarWinds. But we run 6 businesses. We encountered one of our businesses last year, and thank God that we had insurance, and the insurance companies are on top of it. But it's a new weapon that we've got to be totally focused on. So I just want to mention that and make sure that we're on top of that.
Thank you. And we'll continue to work on that. We have taken the right steps, I think, as far as insurance. We've had work done to be sure that we're safe, but it changes so fast and so often that as we look at the resiliency beyond hurricanes, that's got to be one of the big topics that we look at. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Bobby. It's important. Jay, will the change in the pension affect the balance sheet in any way, the pension liability?
I don't expect us to see any impact, and I don't expect it to be a large number of people, but we had to run the numbers sensitivity analysis that it could be. So I think we're fine.
Absolutely. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The only item on the consent agenda is the board meetings from the minutes of January 28th, 2021, and we need to, that's an action item, and we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Additions, deletions, questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we'll go into the items on the monthly financial and operations report. Joe Orfano, are you available?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Baker and JEA board members. Joe Orfano here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you give
Good
us a
morning.
finance
So
report?
let's start. Yeah, you bet. Let's start with our unit sales in the electric system. You see year to date, we're still ahead of schedule there, 3.2% ahead of last year, even though January was just slightly off. Customer growth has been terrific at 2%. We've added almost 10,000 customers relative to last year. And degree days have been quite a bit higher this year relative to the 30-year average. It's a little over 7%. Buoyed by strong residential sales, clearly as a result of the pandemic, residential unit sales are up almost 11%, which offsets the decreases in commercial and industrial. So a good news from unit sales in the electric system. In the water and wastewater system, unit sales are down slightly, but not a terrible story because rain days have increased by about 10 days relative to last year. And that has driven a 23% drop in irrigation revenue. So that's really what's driving this significant drop. But when factoring in the remaining months forecast, we'll just be slightly below 38 million kgals, not a significant drop relative to last year. And customer growth has been significant, almost 9,000 new customers in water and wastewater. That's a 2.5% increase. A lot of boxes and lines here on the right. I'll try to break it down for you. Revenues are up quite a bit relative to last year. That's due largely to a fuel rebate that reduced revenues last year during the pandemic. That was May, June, a $24 million fuel credit. And then the additional $8 million is from the higher unit sales in the electric system. Expenses are up largely due to fuel. And as you probably have seen and heard, natural gas prices are probably on average about $1 higher this year than they were last year. So we're seeing increases not only in natural gas, but also in petcoke and coal. O&M has a modest increase of $4 million. And then in debt service and capital spend, just a great story in terms of continued debt reduction. We plan on doing a retirement defeasance, a little over $100 million next month. $75 million of that will be a reduction in variable rate demand bonds. And we will get into our variable rate debt exposure at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting next month. Plan on having Mike Mace, our senior financial advisor with PFM, presenting a comparative view of JEA versus other large electric, water, and wastewater utility.
Joe, let me
for
ask you.
vernacular purposes here, you see R&R and OCO.
Hey, Joe.
R&R is renewal and replacement funds. By bond resolution, we're required to fund 5% of total revenues, total gross revenues from the prior year.
Hey, Joe.
Which represents about.
Can you
Yes,
stop? Real quick, we had a question from the boardroom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Joe, is this forecast, has this been updated or was this done last year? I mean, does this include the February high energy cost? And does this have the updated on the nat gas cost and petcoke cost?
This has not been adjusted. This represents our current forecast based on last November. And recall that about 50% of our gas purchases are hedged. So we are protected in that regard. And we've seen a recovery in gas prices down to, I believe next month's gas is around $2.85 right now, Bobby. That had been north of $3 a couple of weeks ago about a week ago during the storms. So we've seen improvement there. And I would say the fuel number is current, but capital spend has been updated as well at the bottom. But some of these other components, in terms of the sales forecast and some of the cost figures, are roughly the same as what you saw back in November.
Okay, thanks.
We still feel confident in it, and we will be using some of this R&R and OCO money. OCO is operating capital outlays. That's just the cash that we take in from revenues to fund our capital account, and we use that to fund current capital spend, as well as we've used some of these dollars from past years to fund debt retirement and capital spend as well. So you see the R&R and OCO at $299 in that middle column, and that's going to be offset by the $107 million of total funds that we'll need to do the defeasance retirement next month. So capital spend will fund 100% of that amount with revenue and capital funds. So we're in a good spot on the electric system. Water and wastewater, just a slightly lower drop in revenues due to the unit sales decline. Great story on O&M, stable and in line with budget. And then on the debt service side, we don't have any early debt retirement plan this year. Last year, we did do $48 million, as you see there on the right, the left column of the right-hand chart. The story here is the capital spend projected to be this year about $50 million less than what we had targeted. And we should be funding most of that with capital funds. We indicate a borrowing here of $7 million. We may need to access our revolving credit facility, but very modestly relative to what we had shown back in November. I believe we were showing about a $50 million draw. So the capital spend is lower. Pay for performance program, you saw this slide last month. Down in the cost area, we're doing a great job. That middle water at $5.14 per kgal, that figure is now in green. It technically could have been in green last month. It just was not exceeding standards. So the cost metrics are all exceeding the standards that were set for these performance factors. Tony Long spoke about the terrific job we're doing in safety, and Sheila Presley will address efforts regarding our J.D. Power results and initiatives that she has in her group. Key financial metrics are as strong as what you had seen last month. We'll get into these in more detail during the rating agency presentation overview. I'd like to highlight tremendous strides on that debt to asset ratio, where it's targeted to be at 52%. Over the next 5 years, we intend to drop that number down to the low 40s. So a significant improvement in terms of leverage in the electric system. And in water wastewater, down at 41%, we really have a cushion to bring in this $1.5 billion capital program with a modest amount of new debt. And again, I'll address that later on. The debt, combined debt outstanding, holy cow, if you told me that third bullet point up above under electric system really should be on top, because that's the debt for all of JEA. We intend to be, by fiscal year end, below $3 billion. You'll recall we hit a high number in 2010 at just under $6.4 billion. That's a 54% debt reduction in the last 10 years. It's a tremendous story. I spoke about the debt defeasance that we're going to do next month. On the electric side, out of that $104 million in principal amount, $75 million of that is variable rate debt. So between the $75 million and scheduled maturities, we'll drop that unhedged variable rate debt in the electric system down to about just over $100 million, which represents only 6% of total debt outstanding. Water, wastewater, the unhedged variable amount is $153 million. That represents about 12% of total debt outstanding in water and wastewater, and we will address how we stand and our plans for the variable rate debt in both systems at the March 12th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. But just a tremendous story in terms of reduction in debt while keeping that total weighted average cost significantly below 4% at the moment at 3.7.
Great job.
Our residential electric bills remain at the median. There's upward pressure, as we've indicated, for both FPL and TECO. We do know that FPL, they have publicly announced that they're going to be doing a base rate request here during the first quarter. Probably by the end of the first quarter, they're going to be integrating Gulf Power into the FPL system. We expect there to be an increase, a further increase in their rates. And if you look beginning at Clay Electric across to JEA, there's almost an imperceptible difference in those rates. So you're going to hear that there's a customer perception that our rates are high. I would argue exactly the opposite. And water, you've seen this chart as well, very comfortable with where we are. We're going to address the capacity fees at the March F&A meeting as well, and talk about a rate study. And Julie Crawford, my colleague and our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, will be doing a comprehensive overview of our rates and engage the Finance and Audit Committee in discussions. As chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, Ms. Lanahan said, we need to be talking about rates at every meeting going forward, and we intend to do that, Ms. Lanahan. So that's the end of my prepared comments. We have additional supporting schedules after Hai-Bu's presentation. The monthly financial statements are also included in the board package, and at this point, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Questions of Joe?
Great job.
Good,
I mean,
good report.
yeah.
Great report. Thank you, sir. Ricky, can you give us the
You're
electric
welcome.
report?
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good
Yes,
morning.
we can. Let's get some update this morning. So here's our scorecard. Again, I'll bring your attention to the red dot there. No real big change from last month. Pretty flat. A slight increase, but that's mainly due to last January being such a great month and rolling off. These are 12-month rolling average metrics. So really a flat month for January. We're looking forward to a better number next month. We had a pretty bad month last February with a storm front that came through, causing us some serious outages last February in 2020. So we're looking forward to coming back next month and showing an improvement in that SAIDI number, as the February this month has been really, really good. So we're hoping to see an improvement next month in our SAIDI metric. You can see our generation fleet numbers here. Again, 1.41% for our forced outage rate. Really good number for our fleet. Generation is doing really well this fiscal year, and no environmental compliance permit exceedances for the month. So again, for this fiscal year, we're doing really good on both environmental compliance and our generation fleet. You see our T&D metrics here. You can see by the graphs, we're pretty flat. Again, our SAIDI, our outage duration metric, we're looking for an improvement next month, mainly due to the roll-off of last February. So looking to come back next month and have an improvement in our T&D metrics. So looking forward to next month. And any questions for me?
No, sir. Thank you.
Great
Great
job.
report.
Yeah.
Hi, could you give us the water and wastewater?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, board members. I'll cover the water and wastewater scorecards. Tony Long has covered the safety, and Joe Arpano the sales forecast, so I will cover the remaining items within the next several slides. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. These graphs measure the reliability of our water and wastewater systems. We experienced 17 unplanned water outages in January, resulting in over 3,200 customers being affected. Of the 17 incidences, 13 were due to broken mains, most of which were old asbestos cement pipes. 3 were due to third-party contractors, and 1 was from an installation error. Our average number of minutes of water pressure less than 30 psi was 2.2. The main contributor was a main breakage, which resulted in 800 minutes of water pressure less than 40, but above 25 psi. Our customers' response time remains consistent at 68 minutes. These graphs indicate the status of our water supply. We've been experiencing some rainfall this year, so we are well under our consumptive use permit. This time of the year is what we call the sweet spot of our water supply season. We're beyond the hurricane season, but before the hot and dry, high demand season. So this is the time of the year we do preventive work and rehabilitation of our well fields and our water treatment plants to get ready for the upcoming high demand season. These graphs indicate the health of our wastewater system. We had 4 SSOs to the waters of the state in January. 3 were due to pipe or equipment failure, and 1 was due to debris being lodged in one of our mains. Our total nitrogen discharge to the river continues to be well under the 680-ton limit. The discharge is projected to be 421 tons for this fiscal year. And this concludes my update. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Questions? Hi, going back to the CUP condition 50 on the south side, it looks like the critical well fields of production has dropped from 28 in 2016 to 23 now. Why is that?
Eric, if you can go back to that slide, please. One more. Thank you. Oh.
One more back, please.
Pass forward 2, please.
34, I think. Yeah.
Right there. It's right there.
It's the bottom right chart.
So you're looking at the total production from 2016 to now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So it's a combination of a few things. We had a few dry years from 2016 to 2018, which drove up production. And the second factor is we're able to move more water from our Main Street well field, which is in the north grid, to the south grid. So that helped to alleviate the supply issues down in the south grid.
Are those south grid well fields in good shape?
They are now. We spent the past 5 years upgrading the wells, backplugging where we needed to deal with the chloride intrusion issue, and we've been rehabilitating them to increase the specific capacity. So I'm happy to say that we are in good shape.
I have a question, John. On the nitrogen discharge to St. Johns River, what is the goal? I see the 421. What's your goal for getting this number to?
Our goal for this fiscal year is 450.
Okay.
Okay. I think now we can go to the customer experience team initiatives with Sheila.
Good morning, Chair Baker and Board of Directors. I'll provide a brief update today on the customer satisfaction initiatives. Efforts are underway to reverse the unfavorable trend in customer satisfaction as measured by the J.D. Power Customer Satisfaction Survey. Please know that the work is elevated in importance and the criticality of market improvement is known. First and foremost, we are listening to our customers and have prioritized improvements in areas that are most important to them. During the last board meeting, I mentioned our adoption of listening tools to enhance our understanding of customer sentiment and their response to our customer satisfaction improvement measures as they are implemented. Along with our teams, I monitor social media, recontact surveys, capturing reviews of the service interactions that our customers have had with our customer service teams and field personnel, and commentary provided in the J.D. Power surveys. Typically, consistent themes emerge, and provided on this slide and the next are comments from customers that best capture current sentiment. So first, we'll start with the things that JEA does well in the eyes of our customers. Our community involvement. One customer commented they sponsor some events and workers donate time on our small business support. They encourage small businesses to locate in Jacksonville and hold workshops. The work that we're doing to help customers and our families and businesses to remain afloat during the pandemic. They reduced our bill while we're going through the pandemic, and they offer solutions to what to do to reduce their energy bills. And we even make payments more convenient. We expect to hear more of this type of comment as we proudly expand our payment network this spring to include neighborhood Walmart stores. They are really excited about employment opportunities, and we hear comments about those employment opportunities very often, and we're very excited about that. In the areas where we can improve in our customers' eyes, we often hear that pricing is a matter of concern, and what that ultimately means is the amount of the bill at the end of the month comes as a surprise because we can do a better job of explaining the connection between usage and the charges. And we're working along with our communications team to send messages periodically when events occur, like the recent weather event that meant that our customers may have used heat strips unknowingly and received a larger than anticipated bill. This comment about our public image still surfaces quite often, and we know that we have some work to do in that regard and are working to improve our public image. Your selection of J Stowe helps significantly. We are sending messages to our customers from Jay, acknowledging his presence and that we have turned the corner and are working toward improvement. This slide illustrates the relative movement of the most improved brands and overall customer satisfaction during the 2-year period from 2018 to 2020. As you can see, the most improved brands over that 2-year period, one of the most improved brands, Kentucky Power, improved by 98 points during that 2-year period. Our improvement target is 128 points to achieve the top rank and 53 points to reach the top of the second tier. And you can see that those are lofty goals. as compared to the movement of these other utilities. But we are certain that improvement is forthcoming, and I'll be happy to provide those results as they surface. We know that factors such as advertising and online interactions are important. They are meaningful touch points that greatly influence our customers and their perception of JEA. But when our team members engage with customers, whether in person, over the phone, or on the field, our customers experience firsthand our dedication to service quality and customer satisfaction. We released a customer education and communication campaign on January the 11th. Very positive response to that campaign. As you drive around the city, you'll start to see billboards highlighting our environmental focus and other commitments that we've made. We recognize and appreciate the difficulties that working families continue to face, and will direct new messaging to help our customers recognize our focus and our support during these difficult times. We have established an employee-led work group to serve as ambassadors in their respective work areas for customer satisfaction and to improve employee communication throughout the organization. Because the best organizations know that improvements in employee satisfaction lead to improvements in customer satisfaction and brand reputation. We are focused more than ever on the employee experience. Ultimately, our staff members, all 2,000 ambassadors, are passionate about the work we do and the products and services we offer and the impact we have on our community. If we can truly make strides in this critical area, along with the other areas of focus that I have shared with you today, I believe that we will see meaningful shifts in our brand reputation and customer satisfaction results. So I'd like to highlight commentary from one of our small business customers, coincidentally highlighting the water wastewater group again, and in particular Jackie Shield and her team. Small commercial business experienced some plumbing issues and thought that those plumbing issues were related to the water service that JEA provides. Jackie dispatched the team right away to respond to the daycare that was experiencing these challenges, and the daycare owner and the property owner were so impressed with them that they messaged me directly. The first thing, and if you get to know Jackie, you'll understand how true this is. She says, "Can I bottle 1 ounce of Miss Jackie's energy?" Jackie is always enthusiastic and ready to serve our customers. And then the second one, this was our first commercial property, and this team enabled us to resolve an ongoing concern with our building. This team is amazing. So pictured here, from left to right, Walter Kennedy III, Joseph T., Kyle Schlotletter, Sam Howard, Cedric Barney, and Jackie Shields. Thank you to that team and all of the teams at JEA for serving our customers with excellence. That concludes my report. Are there any questions for me?
Questions of
This
Sheila?
has been,
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe here. Sheila, this outreach and communications is looking very good. Do we have any idea what Kentucky Power, what their secret sauce was to get that 98-point jump at all?
Good question.
I've reached out to Kentucky Power and some of the other utilities. Consistent themes emerge. They're out in the community. They educate their customers on how to use their services, and consistent leadership.
Joe, I was going to ask the
Great.
same
Thank you.
Same thing. And I can see in a future meeting at a future utility that we're going to be the one that they say, what did the JEA do to improve 120 points? And I know that you and your team are going to do that. Sheila, this has been, since I joined the board about a year ago, the best customer experience presentation that we've had. I love the customer comments. Please keep those going. I love our focus on associates. In the presentation, it was embedded that we're going to be moving towards face-to-face. Obviously, that's only when it's safe to do so, for community outreach. Remind me, do we do an employee culture survey? And when was the last time we've done one, if so?
We recently administered an employee communication survey. An employee culture survey hasn't been conducted in a while. I'm certain that will come because, you know, obviously the employees serve the customer, and if the employees are satisfied, that will produce great customer satisfaction results.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you say that will come. I think it's really important, but love the presentation. Please keep our customer comments in these presentations going forward.
I will do that.
I think it is absolutely proof positive how important JEA is as a municipal utility to this city. When you think about the safety record that our employees have, that tells you there's a lot of good culture going on. When you look at the environmental improvements that have been made, and you look at a rate increase history of flat rates, both in water and electricity for 10 years, that's not a business that's striving to make maximum profits. It's a business that's striving to take care of this community. And
the financial condition of this
is terrific.
Is terrific, yeah.
In the process. So we owe that to the employees that have made this baby hum through good times and bad. And our customer appreciation is when they realize what a great job our employees are doing. We're gonna get that jump. We deserve it.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, real quickly, I want to echo what Sheila talked about, the idea of employee satisfaction, increasing customer satisfaction and loyalty, and then remind everybody, especially any employees and staff that happen to be on, the focus that we have is on customer loyalty, business excellence, and building an unbeatable team. And everything we've talked about here ties into all three of those issues. This one, the employee engagement survey idea is something we will do. I don't know when the last one was done, and I'm not sure how helpful under the craziness of the last few years, how helpful it will be, but we will do that. I wanted to be sure that we got to a place that we would be able to implement things out of that before we go, but we'll work towards that goal and continue going down this path. But I appreciate the comments. And the other one that Sheila and I talk about a lot is we use the J.D. Power numbers to measure. We are not using the J.D. Power numbers as the target. That's a secondary piece. What our main focus is doing what's best for our customers. So thank you.
The one thing I'd add to that, Jay, is the backbone of our success are our employees. And what we were talking about today, it might be 4%, it might be 33% that are retiring. And we've got to have a plan for how do we make sure we fill that pipeline? How do we make sure we have the educational components in there to educate the employees we need?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Great
Thank
report.
you.
Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is a rating agency presentation by Joe Orfano.
Before Joe gets started, Joe, I got one question that I missed to ask. You know, we said our goal is to get our debt down to 2.948 billion by the end of the year. Does that include the restricted cash and investments? Is that net against that or not?
No, it's just the gross debt outstanding, Bobby.
So our net debt is 2.4 billion, is that correct?
Yeah, when you take all of the restricted funds out of the equation, it's a great story. Absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure we all have it. I think, I'm just asking the question, we should look at net debt. You know, if these are restricted cash accounts.
And that is factored in to that debt to asset ratio, Bobby. We do take those, we net the debt, the reserve restricted funds against that.
Yeah, that's what I was working on. Yeah, I was working on that versus trying to get to that number. So I just think when you highlight that number, I would use a net debt number. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt.
We will certainly, no. And through the chair to Bobby, on the question about the we do reforecast every month. We don't change the 5-year forecast. So we presented the November forecast to the rating agencies, but for the purposes of updating the board, we are showing January actuals year to date and then layering in the forecast for the remaining 8 months of the year. So you see the capital spends down and fuel represents the most current forecast. Now it doesn't reflect the February, the period of time when prices spike, but we'll have that updated next month. And when we go to finance and audit, we'll be showing you a recommendation for the fuel rate that takes into account the forecast for next year as well.
And the only other comment I make is, Chair Baker, thank you. Marty and I know what it takes to go through these rating agencies, and thank you for the effort and time you spent on that.
Yeah, that's what I told Jay the other night. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, that was anything but a burden. It was, our team did a fantastic job, and they've got a great rapport with the rating agencies. It was fun. It was
but you're
great
part
to
of
see.
that team, and thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, let's show them what you showed them.
Well, Chair Baker, that is heartfelt. We appreciate your participation. To set up this presentation, you assisted us with our first rating agency presentation a mere 2 or 3 weeks after you were appointed and held the first meeting last April. So that shows your immediate impact with the rating agencies. We then proceeded to have additional meetings in the summer. And then, as Jay and Bobby have pointed out, you sat through at least 6 hours. And it had to be tough with the last one with Standard & Poor's last week. But I want to echo my appreciation for your direct involvement. There is nothing more significant from a governance standpoint than to have the board chair participate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jay for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Joe. And it's this presentation takes about 2 hours, but we're not doing that. This is an awful lot of the information that that is in this package are the things that we update you on monthly and that you get on a regular basis. But the team, Joe's team, is part of this. Ricky Erickson, Haivu participated to talk about the operations side of the business. And really all of this was built up from the staff and the people that work on this every day. And then we get to spend, and it is fun, particularly whenever it is such a good story. That helps make it more fun to do. But we hit the highlights on the next couple of slides, and I'm not going to go through all of these, and Joe and I are going to kind of bounce back and forth on this, not cover every single slide. But we had the electric system highlights. The message here is we've got a strong capital program, and we've got lowest debt we've had in 35 years. We moved to the water system, and it is a broken record, same story, capital program 1.5 billion, and strong financial outlook and strong growth. The next items that we covered really was a summary of the board members, and Chair Baker covered the next item that was following the slide. And then we got into, so this was the governance was something they were very interested in at the board, at each of the rating agencies. And so Chair Baker reviewed the changes in the charter, the effort that you all went through to put me in the role that I'm in. And then we talked a little bit about the leadership team. This slide shows the leadership team as it existed while we were reviewing this, and in the middle of the rating agency meetings, we changed the structure to what we talked about before. So Chair Baker covered an awful lot of that. We hit on the strength of the economic forecast and where we stand in Jacksonville and the Northeast Florida region, and they already had a lot of this information because this is what they do. We talked about the area that we cover, the service territory, and the strength of the size of our system. And the growth, as you see, 10,000 electric meters and 8,000 water meters added in fiscal year 20. With that, we moved on to some of the financial discussions, and Joe covered most of that information.
Thanks, Jay. I'll spend a few minutes going through these slides because they're impactful. And it's no coincidence, Julie Crawford in the middle, who is our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, no coincidence that we threw this slide in here because Julie and her group, Victor Blackshear on the left, Scott Schlossman on the right, Eric Davis is not pictured here because it's a few years old, but these folks are vital to the preparation of our annual budget process, as well as our financial forecast. So hats off to them. They are the glue that keeps this team together. Historical financial metrics. We've talked about this during the monthly update, focusing on the debt to asset ratio. And just for your information purposes, we do show the electric and water and wastewater systems side by side here. But the debt to asset ratio we've talked about, what a great improvement we've seen in both systems, but particularly in electric. Debt service coverage looks a little odd that it's so high in fiscal year 20. That's because earlier debt retirements that were done back in 2017 paved the way for what we thought were the MEAG local units 3 and 4 coming online in 2019 and 2020. Well, that didn't happen, so we had extra cash to pay down debt. So that's why you see those significantly higher debt service coverage figures. Liquidity remains quite strong in both systems. The debt management we talked about, we'll be focusing on the variable rate portfolio. Mentioned that we'd be down around $100 million by fiscal year end after the defeasance next month. That's 6% of total debt outstanding. So a great story. Again, relative to the peak in the electric system of $4.3 billion. This includes St. Johns River Power Park as well as sheer debt. So this is the total electric enterprise on this slide. Financial results. In the past, we've typically done a slide that says what we committed to and what we achieved. Obviously, with the change in leadership, we just put highlights from last year. A great story that Jay talked about. The total debt reduction in the system was $235 million, and a reducing debt to asset ratio expected to be at 52% by fiscal year end, with a robust capital program, $194 million last year, and expected to be $200 million per year going forward in the next 5 years. Unit sales really have dropped only modestly over the last 10 years. At Jay's direction, we dropped many years off this chart and made it a 10-year chart because a lot of what had happened in the prior years was recession-driven. So we've simplified this story. And just to note that for financial planning purposes, we do not project any increase in unit sales. We believe that that's a conservative route. We began doing this back in 2014. The rating agencies commented that they believe we were the first, either municipal utility or investor-owned electric utility, to forecast no sales growth. And again, we've had relatively modest either increases or decreases year to year. A great story on rates. As Chair Baker mentioned, we have not raised rates. Well, revenue requirements, we did a little bit of a base rate increase accompanied by a fuel decrease back in 2017, but the overall bill to the customer has remained stable since 2010. Back last April, we were talking about a compound annual growth rate of 2.25%. Happy to report through various activities by Ricky's folks, by High Boo's folks, in terms of cost containment and capital spend, the retirement of Power Park, the upcoming retirement of Shearer. We're seeing very modest 1% increases between fiscal years 23 and 25. So a great story. And any modest unit sales increase over this period would even allow us to increase rates even less than this 1%. So this is a terrific story in terms of our residential rates.
Hey, Joe, it is a terrific story. At the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, on the list of things we're going to talk about is the fuel charge rate, and we're in a position to be able to reduce that. What that would probably entail is leaving the base, the total bill to the customer the same, which is in effect a base rate increase, but we'll be able to supply the same overall rate to our customers. And we'll get into more details on that, but I want to be clear that that is some movement within the rate, but it does have a base rate adjustment that's included in that over the next couple of years.
Correct.
Yeah.
But no overall increase in the bill to the customer, correct?
That's right.
Thank you. In terms of projections, we've talked about this. The debt-to-asset ratio, unbelievably, will drop into the low 40s while maintaining superior liquidity. Just a tremendous story. We talked about debt defeasance in the electric system. We also plan on, at the conclusion of the dismantlement and remediation at St. Johns River Power Park, we intend to defease about $102 million of outstanding debt at Power Park. And then when the Shearer transaction, upon FPL's rate hearing and order that's anticipated October, November of this calendar year, we expect to pay off all of the outstanding Shearer debt. So just a tremendous, those actions will allow us to get below $3 billion. And as Bobby pointed out, from a net standpoint, after taking restricted cash out of the equation, down into the $2.5 billion. And it's a great idea, Bobby, to show that figure. So we will do that going forward.
I do feel,
Capital needs.
Joe,
No.
as a banker, I just want to say, I know we're really proud that we're reducing our total debt, but, maybe it's just me channeling my inner banker. At a certain point, with rates where they are, it would make sense to incur some debt to advance some projects that we may want to go ahead and take a look at. Jay and I have talked about this, so I want to get us, we're excited. I want to change our script a little bit. We're at a great low point of debt, but there may be a point in time where it makes sense to take on some debt.
I agree.
Absolutely. And we're driving down to a capital structure that, similar to what we plan on doing in water and wastewater, is taking on a proportionate amount of new debt while funding the majority of the capital spend with the revenues, but yes, taking on new debt, which allows us to predominantly in the past, we have funded new generation with new money or major transmission projects as well. So this allows us to form the foundation for borrowing going forward. I love to issue new money too. I don't want to say it's boring to do all these refundings and defeasances, but yeah, new money, that excites me, Marty. So we intend to do that going forward.
Joe, I'll add that it's one of the discussions that Joe and I've had because I think it was absolutely the right thing and appropriate for us to take the debt down from as high as it was. And we're working off of an awful lot of policy direction and theory that came out of the 2008, 9, 10 timeline. And what we need to do is bring back to you the thought about what is the right amount, what's the right timing. That's when I was talking about the right, on the water and wastewater side is specific, but it's true on all things that we do. What's the right price? What's the right people to manage it? And what's the right way to fund it is another piece of this. So I think you're right.
What's the right amount and what's the mix?
I'd say, what we've done is stabilize this organization, put it in a strong financial position. Our focus is how do we maintain our customer base and how do we grow that customer base? And I think it is worth the next 6 months to let Jay get his team in place and really think through what are the drivers that we need to be thinking through. I don't know if that makes sense or not, Jay, but
that's exactly
what I would add. I mean, we've got our strategic planning session coming up in July, so that's a good opportunity to really think through where those balances are and, to Marty's point, what are the capital projects we really need to advance and take advantage of the current finance rates.
Yes.
And not only the project, but how do we make sure that we stabilize this population base and how do we grow it?
Yeah.
And that is part of what you're saying. The other is, some other thought process. But our goal is to make sure Jacksonville is growing.
Yes.
And how do we do that with our customers? So, but I just think taking our time and with this financial situation, you got a lot of drivers that you can move on.
The decisions that we've made to this point have allowed us to have this discussion. Had we not done that, then we would not, there would be an entirely different set of.
Absolutely. And the, economic uncertainty of this time last year, as an example, I mean, as we were entering the pandemic, it makes sense we are where we are today, and we've got so much opportunity. I just want to make sure that we leverage that opportunity going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going,
and
Joe.
we talked about the $1 billion. I'm sorry?
Keep going.
Thank you, sir.
Says the man who sat through this presentation 3 times.
Capital spend in the electric.
I'm sorry.
It's good.
You're good, Joe. Keep on.
Let's go.
Go, Joe. Don't let them distract you.
Don't pay any attention to her.
Thank you. We've talked about the capital spend funded in the next 5 years, 100% with funds from our operations. So just a great story. I mentioned the defeasances as well. So moving on to water, wastewater, while not as significant a debt reduction, still $803 million since the peak in 2011. We talked about the variable rate debt on the right, which is about 12% of the total debt outstanding. And again, we'll be addressing that in greater detail at the March Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Results for water, wastewater, just again, a tremendous year. A debt to asset ratio that is the envy of the industry, I would say, down at 41%. Total debt reduction, $126 million. A robust capital spend that's getting even larger. And the 2.2% increase, that's in water, wastewater, and reuse sales. So total sales were up 2.2%. A terrific story there. Unit sales we did achieve 1.5% last year, 0.4% annualized over the last 10 years. We're comfortable with a 1.5% sales growth for the next 5 years, certainly evidencing the growth in our system, both on the South Grid and St. Johns County and also up in Nassau. Rates have been steady, similar to electric systems since 2012. We don't see much in the way of rate activity over the next 5 years. There's a placeholder in 2025 for an increase. We're evaluating that, as well as capacity fees. Julie Crawford will be talking about the capacity fees. We brought up that subject at the last board meeting and intend to do a deeper dive at Finance and Audit Committee. Financial projections, just again, rock solid in terms of coverage, debt to asset, and liquidity. Again, these metrics are consistent, frankly, with a AAA rating. Capital spend robust, $1.5 billion on it. For the total, we have some new money needs. We're not anticipating doing the full $50 million this year. As we talked about during the monthly presentation, only about $7 million, maybe zero. But we will have new money needs projected to be, to Marty's point, about 30% of the total capital requirement will be new money. And to the extent we have additional projects like septic tanks or zero water discharge, we do have the opportunity to do additional new money financing with a debt to asset ratio down in the low 40s. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jay.
So the next several slides, and for Mr. Van Osdol and General DeSalvo, we're going to skip a few slides because that's operations updates, and those were well done, but they're topics that we've covered in large part already. And before I talk about the CO2 emissions, I want to be sure that we also state and let people know, Sheila in particular will remind us of this. We can get kind of tied up in $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and every dollar really translates into something for our customers. And so we keep in mind that whenever we're talking about this, it's the size and scope of the system that makes those numbers so big. But in the end, our customers are paying us for the services that we provide, and we're providing services to people who many times what they pay us is the second or third highest bill that they pay. And so we do this, and it is something we have fun talking about because it is fun to serve the community and to be able to build projects to help support the community. But we also keep in mind and understand that it impacts customers. So we're not making light of the dollar amount. We're having fun doing this because I think it helps us serve our customers really well. And one of the things that we've been able to do on this particular slide is to deal with CO2 emissions. And the bars on this chart show the CO2 emissions dropping. And we talk about it as 9,400,000 and something thousand tons of carbon emissions, which is very meaningful to people, I think. But it's equivalent to about 1.8 million cars off the road each year. It is a good story for the environment, which is the other piece of what we do. We serve utilities in the Northeast Florida, but we also take care of the environment on our water and wastewater side. We're going to continue to reduce carbon emissions as we move forward with closing of the Plant Shear, as we move forward with the opening of Plant Vogel, and as we increase solar projects that show up on the map over the next several years.
1.8 million cars a year?
Annually.
Wow.
And that is, say that one more time.
The amount of carbon emissions that we've reduced from our system is equal to what 1.8 million cars would have.
Is that when Vogel comes online?
That's the difference between the peak at 2007 and the projected in 2024. So
Okay,
Vogel,
so projected
it is
24, yeah,
projected,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
It is projected with Vogel, but the vast majority of that has occurred
I was gonna say it's happened. if you look at the
already.
spread.
That's the change in the work that we've already done. But then, yes, we do better. And we're doing the integrated resource electric plan that will also help us look at that as we move.
But you're talking about customers, that's a branding piece that we should be selling.
Agreed.
I mean, that's Bobby proof. You know, dumbest guy in the room understands it. But but I really believe that because it does say, you know, that's something we should be selling, branding what we've done, because that's impressive.
There are so many impressive stories that we're going to keep telling and we're going to let people know about. And since I started with cheesy comments, I'll continue. It's not about the light on the building, it's the light of the employees and the things that we're doing to share what we do every day. And we do that keeping in mind that it costs the customers, and we need to be sure that we're serving them appropriately too. So thank you. And you even teed up the Bobby proof thing, and I didn't bite. So I'm making progress.
This time.
That's right.
Next time you might.
Sheila's on top of this. She's going to get the message out. Okay.
So before getting into the wrap-up, just a couple of comments about Vogel and our MEAG PPA. Just prior to our last meeting, last Thursday with Standard & Poor's, Southern Company had their earnings, did their earnings release and a subsequent earnings call that afternoon and announced a $385 million increase in the cost of Plant Vogel Units 3 and 4. While it sounds significant, they do have a co-owner agreement that protects the other co-owners in the event that the total costs exceed $800 million above what the Georgia Commission had approved back with the VCM, which is the Vogel Construction Monitoring Report number 19 that was filed a couple of years ago. At this point, they're about $700 million higher than that report. To put that into context, it's about a 4% total increase. It's not unexpected, as Jay points out, that a project like this is going to be challenged from a cost standpoint and also from a timeline, an estimated timeline to complete. We have a independent consultant evaluating that right now. They are challenged. Hopefully they'll meet the November 21 and November 22 in-service dates, but we're continuing to watch it. We're actively participating in monthly calls with MEAG to include Jay's personal participation as well. So we're keenly aware. But Project J, which is the PPA that we participate in, represents about 9.35% of that total cost. And much of that cost is already included in MEAG's latest financial projections. So not a significant impact. We believe MEAG has told us it could result in about $1.5 million to $2 million of additional costs per year, which in the grand scheme of things is not significant. So to wrap up, we think we've got two stellar systems here, both from an operational and financial performance standpoint, are at best in class. We made a point, I personally made a point, why the electric system should return to AA across all three rating agencies. Only Fitch has us at AA right now. And we believe that water and wastewater merits a AAA credit rating. I stand behind that. S&P had made us AAA a couple of years ago, but dropped us down as a result of all of the activities over the past 18 months. So with that, Jay and I will be happy to take any questions, additional questions that you may have.
I just have one statement, Mr. Chair. Joe, I just want to thank you for stepping up in your current position, and you've done a great job, so thank you.
You're welcome. It's a privilege.
My takeaway from these hearings is that the rating agencies got Joe's pitch loud and clear. He was very forceful, very persuasive. I think, unfortunately, with Plant Vogel right in the middle of this coming out with a little more of a cost increase, it puts him on edge of what could happen. And so my bet is that not much will happen until, we start getting that behind us as far as potential, escalations. But those guys did a great job, and they have a wonderful rapport with the rating agencies, and we're in good shape. So I congratulate them.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, you have anything you want to say on that?
No, sir. I appreciate it.
The water reuse bill, Wayne Young, can you bring us up to date on that?
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Baker and directors. This presentation is an update on the status of the proposed state legislation titled Water Reuse Bill. And this bill has been identified as one that could have major operational and financial impacts on JEA. To provide a very brief review, last year during the 2020 Florida legislative session, 2 bills were introduced seeking use of reclaimed water throughout the state of Florida. The bills also included a provision to eliminate nearly all wastewater discharge to surface waters in the state of Florida. The bills did not pass into law. However, in anticipation of the bills being reintroduced into the 2021 legislative session, which they were, we began an early campaign to reach out to the legislative body to share our concerns with the bills and also make recommendations to assuage those concerns. Actions taken thus far includes 2 briefings to you all, to the board, one of which resulted in a resolution of support from the City Council. We also engaged in other initiatives to voice our concerns, to include addressing the full body of the Duval County Legislative Delegation and bringing on lobbyists to represent us in Tallahassee. We have also been actively engaged over the past few months in answering questions from legislative staffers and elected officials. So where do we currently stand with the new bills that were introduced? It's worth reiterating that we do support the intent of the bills, and we continue to make significant investments to sustain the long-term health of the Floridan aquifer. This includes the alternative use of surface water discharge from our treatment plants. However, in regards to the timelines established in the bills, we find that the deadline of November 1st, 2021 to submit a 5-year implementation plan and the deadline of January 1st, 2028 to achieve a near zero discharge level to be infeasible due to technological, financial, and environmental hardships. You'll see our requested adjustments to those dates shown in the parentheses. Such an adjustment will allow submission of a thoroughly vetted plan, and secondly, and more importantly, execution of that plan in a manner that is congruent with our current long-term strategy, which, once again, I need to keep reiterating this, is that JEA's strategy is congruent with the intent of the bills. In that regard, it's principally a matter of just having different timelines. So where do we stand on adjusting the timelines currently? The Senate version of the bill is moving through the committee process faster than the House version of the bill. On the Senate side, there is, unfortunately, little indication that the plan submission and implementation dates will change. However, there is some good news. The bill's sponsor did propose an amendment to the bill that allows implementation plans to include conceptual planning. This amendment will provide some latitude in our evaluation of projects that support reduction of surface water discharge. Also contained in the bill is a provision that provides utilities the opportunity to specifically address hardships associated with meeting a 5-year implementation period. It would be the responsibility of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to evaluate all the submitted plans and approve or disapprove extensions beyond 5 years. FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, will also have approval authority of a plan if it demonstrates financial infeasibility of pursuing zero discharge for certain plants. And that would be based on geography, hydrogeology, et cetera. And if you all recall in our resolution that we put forth to the City Council, we did list 13 different areas where we do have and foresee hardships in meeting the 5-year plan. While the amendment and added provisions are good news and proof positive that our concerns are being heard in Tallahassee, we will continue our current position on reassessing the timeline in the bill. We will also continue to follow the Senate bill as well as the House bill once it begins to move through the committees. In regards to the House bill, it is expected that a similar amendment to accept conceptual plans as part of the implementation plan will also be proposed. The House bill also contains similar provisions to allow approval of implementation plans that exceed the 5-year due date due to hardships. Once again, we are holding our position on reassessment of the timeline. And one more thing I'd like to note too is that we have already engaged and approached the Florida Department of Environmental Protection with a request to discuss a process that they might use in their assessment of the implementation plans. Their role in all of this is that once the plan is submitted, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection has 9 months to review every plan and then submit approval or disapproval of the plan. So they play a very important role. Our request to them was welcomed, and they are open to an engagement as far as discussions. But at this point in time, they too are observing what's going on with the bill. They'd like to see where it's going to end up and how it shapes up. And that will help define their process that they will use when they look at the bill. So in a nutshell, that is where we stand. We'll continue to move forward. And our lobbyists have been working very closely with us, and we've been keeping in touch with them on a weekly, sometimes twice a week basis. Are there any questions or discussions?
Okay, guess not. Thank you, Wayne. Great summary of a important and tough situation, but I really love the way we've handled it. We have been very proactive and done everything we can, and I think we've made our point that we are doing everything we can, and that'll pay off over time. Okay. As we go into there are no committee reports, and as we go into other business, is there any old business? Any other new business? Is there any open discussion you all would like to have at this point? There is no report from the chair. I've kind of run my mouth when it was appropriate or mostly appropriate. And are there any announcements?
Two announcements. One, I'm doing this one on the fly, and it is probably not the right thing exactly, except that the news has just come out that Dr. Faison and with the mayor and the governor are going to open a new COVID vaccine site at Edward Waters College to serve some of the underserved communities. And I bring it up because it just popped up on my feed and because it is another sign of what each of you do. Dr. Faison is not here because he's doing something else that is important in this community, and it's a continuation of us being honored to be able to work with you every day. And so thank you for what you all do each day to help serve the community. That's it.
Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the meeting, we're adjourned. Thank you.
How are you doing, Leon?
Okay.